Hello, beautiful people. Hello, my name is Isabel. I am a coach for Major League Hacking. I just wanted to show myself before getting started, wanted to see if anyone else wanted to join. Um, in the meantime, welcome to season launch. If you haven't been to a Global Hack Week before, this is one of many sessions that I'll be doing this week. This is part one of three, specifically for learning Next.js and how to build your own personal website. Fun fact, I made her have the same hair color as me. It's a little dark, but my hair is like pink on a good day, I guess. Um, just Once again, my name is Isa or Isabel. I'm a coach at Major League Hacking. My pronouns are she or her. And a fun fact about me is that I've seen a lot of anime. If you want to connect with me, this is my LinkedIn. I see some people coming in. Hi, nice to see you. And just to uh, get a sense of where we're going, ignore 3 and 4. But the first two things that I want to cover today is the basics of Next.js, including setting it up and fundamental concepts that you need to understand in order to make your own website using Next.js. And then I'll go over what goes into a personal website and how exactly I want to structure the next two sessions that we'll have. So, prerequisites, I can get rid of this banner now. Prerequisites, I am expecting that y'all somewhat already know JavaScript or basic TypeScript. I'm not very good at TypeScript yet myself, so that's probably not very, like, I'm not expecting that too much, but having an understanding of, for example, how React.js works or how Tailwind works would be very, very helpful so that I don't have to go back and explain those kinds of concepts. I'll leave it in the screen for a few minutes. If you haven't seen that link, the link tree, that's how you access my slides and any of the other slides that I've had in prior streams. I will put it in the chat for you. No worries. Or I'll just do straight from here then. So that is the link for our slides. Um, I am okay. So starting from the top, just in case, I would love to talk about anime, like if we have time later in at the end of the stream. Bungo Stray Dogs is pretty cool. I haven't gotten into it yet, but I would love to talk anime. The links I already gave the slides, and then all of the links I'm talking about after will be on the slide, so you can just click from there. Um, and then my LinkedIn will also be on the slides. It's not clickable, which I should have made clickable, but it's Garsh over there. Someone asked if JavaScript works on IntelliJ. From my understanding, IntelliJ is with Java. And it's an IDE, so like it's where you type in your code. I don't think it will work as well exactly as what Mr. MPH is saying. It's not ideal, but it'll work. It's basically like Google Docs versus Microsoft Word. There are things in IntelliJ that work specifically for Java. That, for example, Visual Studio Code might do a little better for JavaScript. So that makes a good segue into I will be using VS Code for all of our coding. If that's not what you're comfortable with, that's totally okay. Use what you're comfy with. But that's just personally what I like to use. Yeah, exactly. Here it's Visual Studio Code, and Node and npm is what I'm asking y'all to download. So someone is asking, should I set it up with TypeScript or just JavaScript? I will personally be using TypeScript just to keep up with what is best practice, what is being used in like the industry. Everyone's using TypeScript now, and there are a lot of good advantages to using TypeScript. I personally am better at JavaScript, so I'm probably gonna like translate in my brain JavaScript to TypeScript, which might be a little helpful for y'all. Um, for the extensions that you want to install for VS Code, I don't have any particular suggestions, just like whatever is for that language. Just look up JavaScript or look up TypeScript, and then whatever extension is there for that, use it. Otherwise, I think the only one sometimes I turn on GitHub Copilot. Prettier is also nice. Thank you for that. So Prettier is also good for like seeing the structure of your code being like color coded and everything. It's also good for linting. I can go back to this slide at another. That is. Do you see how like it's spazzing my mouse? That's odd. Okay. Let's hope it fixes that. I can go back to the screen if you need it to, but yes, I will move on to it's gonna feel a little bit like a lecture. But if you get bored, if you have any questions, if you want to pause, take a break, absolutely welcome to do that. I have a separate screen just for the chat. So if you have any questions, I can keep an eye out for that. But going into it, I will be teaching Next.js, but it's built on top of React.js, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a JavaScript library which is for building user interfaces based on components. The component part of it, which is like small pieces that are reusable in different different pages, like buttons or carousels or cards. Those components are the main like difference with React.js versus, for example, just HTML and CSS. Next.js takes it a step further by providing server-side rendering and static website generation to React.js. So you're already using React, and on top of that, we're improving the performance of it. I will be teaching just Next.js. If there are anything, like if I see that a lot of people don't understand a React concept, I'll backtrack, no problem. But I'm working on the assumption that unless you ask, you already know React. Is that cool? Yes, cool. Awesome. So once again, server-side rendering, which means instead of from the client, from the browser, it's coming from the server. I'll go into it a little bit more, which makes it a little bit faster because instead of sending everything to the browser and letting the browser do all the work, it's coming from the server and it's only sending what you need. Static website generation is related to what we're doing right now because portfolios are basically just static websites that tell your, let's say, recruiter or employer the things that you've done, the projects you've built. So going from there, going from there, so the project structure of Next.js looks like this. If you went from the first this command, npx create next app, what you will see looks like this, where you have whatever app you named it. I called it test app. And then I have built in the app router, the app folder, which is actually like, stick a pin on this. It's so new. It started like less than a year old. It's a very new paradigm shift for Next.js. I'm actually most likely going to stick with the pages router once we actually get into the coding, but I'll explain the differences of the new things that they're doing because I want to, both for my sake and for y'all's sake, keep up with what the industry is currently doing. So app router is what you're given. But because it's less than a year old, our debugging is going to be significantly harder because people haven't Googled enough bugs and errors yet. So sometimes those changes might not be as easy to fix. So keeping that in mind, I wanted to use the old, slightly older, like Next.js is at most, 7 years old? So I'll be using the pages router and explaining more on that once we start coding, but what you're starting with is the app router. We also have the node modules, which is grayed out because we are that is the dependencies of our project. We have the public folder, which is where the static assets are going. I didn't full screen it. Oopsies. And then these are just explanations on the other kinds of files that they have, like for the TypeScript configuration, where the project dependencies go, the configuration file for specifically Next.js, etc. Both the app router way and the page router way, which is the old school way, they have naming conventions, which means they know which files do which thing based on how you name it. So if you change the name, it might not recognize that, hey, pages.tsx was the thing that you're referring to for it to render. So make sure that you keep in mind what the file names and the folder names are. So if anyone, unless anyone has any questions about that, I'll go into this new concept that we have with the app router called server components. And I think this is a really cool concept that I want to explain, even if we're not actively using it in the coding. Because so Next.js is server first. So it would make sense now that they're doing it that there are server components and client components. This basically just means interactive versus non-interactive. If it's not interactive, aka it's just a picture, it's just a logo, it's just text, you want to keep that as a server component because it's not interactive. It's just gonna show up, do nothing else. Whereas the components that you do want to be interactive, like a button, a search bar, those would be client components. Those are the only ones that the client has, the browser has to worry about. This makes it a lot more like it makes the performance of your website better. In our case, it'll maybe make the loading time a few milliseconds faster. But in a bigger case, like if you have a hackathon project that you use Next with, and you're pulling from an API and you have a lot of data coming in, if you put all of those information in your client bundle in the file that goes to your browser that your browser then renders, it makes loading very, very slow because it has to open all of those files. Whereas if it's coming from the server, if it's a server component, the server will serve it and the browser won't have to worry about anything except the interactivity, changing pages, putting like interactivity and other kinds of things. That's what the client components will do. Moving into the client components, the difference here that I've noticed myself start to struggle with when I switched into the app router is you have to say use client on top of every file that then becomes a client component. So anything that's interactive, like a button, you'll have to say use client for Next to recognize that you can then use on click, use state, and any other like event listeners, lifecycle events, and API functionalities. So all of those will be separated once we get into app router territory, where only the client components can use the event listeners and stuff. Just wanted to explain that. Once we start into coding, I personally won't be using the server client components just because it's so new that if y'all make a mistake or if I make a mistake, which is most likely, I might not be able to Google the right answer. Like I won't be able to get the right support just because it's so new and not everyone has tried it out yet. I saw a question in the chat that says, so it's just a string at the top of the file? Yes, exactly. So it's an extra line on the first, the extra first line of code that says just quotations use client. That's it. So going into patterns, these are the paradigms, the concepts, the things that you need to keep in mind for Next.js, which is for example, moving client components to the leaves. What this means is if you have, for example, an entire page, those client components like your buttons, your search bars, don't put them in your root folder. Put them only on the pages that actually use them. That way, let's say you have a page that doesn't have a search bar, and then you have another page that does, only the page that has the search bar will have to put in the effort, the time, the loading to render that search bar, to work on that search bar. This keeps the layout a little streamlined, and more, um, it's better for the performance, again, with loading times and like bundle sizes. um, there's also composing of the client and server components, which means all of the server components get rendered first and then the client components. What this looks like is in an entire page, let's say in this looking page, my text will happen first, and then the styles, and then at the very last, once all of my text is rendered, will the search bar be rendered. um, they get pre-rendered, which means they, like, the spot is saved. Like that spot is, that space is already for the search bar, but it's just as HTML during initial page load. So one thing that makes Next cool is it's incremental, like it's not all at once. So there's an initial page load that has the server components, that has the pre-rendered client components, and then after will the client components be rendered, and it's not HTML anymore. Again, if you have any questions, if I'm going too fast, if you're bored, or need a break, feel free to type in chat. I am very much listening. I don't want to be the only one like talking. Um, Going into nesting server components inside client components, it is done such that you can't import a server component into a client component, but you can pass them as props. What this looks like, functionally, so pausing because someone wants to look for the slides. I thank you. You are my hero. Thank you for that. The slides are in the chat. We're good there. If you pass, so instead of, for example, in our React, if you're familiar, assuming you're already familiar with React.js, we usually have our components such that it looks like, let's go to a previous one. You see here, it says import from, and then the file. That's usually how we import components in React. What this paradigm is saying in Next is that you can't do that from server to client, which means if you have something text-based and you want to put it in, let's say, a carousel, you can't import it, but you can pass it as a prop. That is this part. So here it says toggle parentheses children. This means that the children are therefore a prop, a property that gets passed, as opposed to something like when you go, do I have an example? I should have, my bad. But instead of calling it like a div or like an HTML quotation that has the, what are those braces? Pointy braces? The less than and the greater than. That is not how you would call it if it's server to client. What it's saying is you can pass them as props, but not as import. I want to pause. I've run the NTM and they're asking me for the name. Oh, doesn't matter. Angle brackets. Thank you for that. Yes. So angle brackets, if you can't use this kind of syntax, this angle bracket syntax, if you are passing from server to client. But client to server, it'll work just fine. So these are like, these nuances are another reason why I figured I'm teaching it to you, but you don't have to use it once we're coding in, I want to say Thursday. I'm pretty sure Thursday. I'm going to say Thursday. But yeah, so just keep that in mind for when you, for when you want to go into app router, like newer territory. Moving on, server only package will help prevent unintended client usage of server code. What that means is there you add it, it's literally just server only. I think that's the only thing that it's called. And then you add it if you're doing the pass server to client as prop thing. That makes it so that whatever the client does will not mess with your server code. Finally, fetching data in server components versus your client components will help improve performance and user experience. Again, I've like explained it a bunch of times in a previous slide where these server components are just text, they're just static. So it might as well come from the server who only will give your browser the bare minimum that it needs, just that page instead of all of the pages at once. Okay, moving forward, the next thing I want to describe is the context. I have a few examples here on the right, but basically context is how React and Next it's what React and Next uses to share data between components. For example, let's say I have one component that has all of my projects listed, and then I have another component that displays the project. Communicating between those components is ideally using contexts. And what this is saying is that in Next, you got to wrap it around. So it's fully supported within client components, so the components that have interactivity, but you can't easily, like, it's not as straightforward if you're doing it through server components. And excuse me, the theme provider, so we'll see here, we're importing the theme provider. And then this is our, let's say, our app function, like the root main function that we have that will get rendered. It's called, in this case, it's a layout, root layout. And then here the syntax is saying, this is my props, children. And then colon, this is the type of my props, children is a React node. So that's one difference. If you haven't gotten used to TypeScript yet, this is one thing that I've been learning that is important with TypeScript, which is you have to define the type of the thing that you're using. So here we see that theme provider is wrapping around children, which is all of the app that you're using, because this is the root layout. This is like the very infrastructure, the very foundations. So here we see that the children, so all of the things being rendered, is wrapped by theme provider, but it's not that HTML and body are within theme provider. So it's still wrapped by HTML and by body, but everything else within that, all the things you're rendering, all your components, etc., have to be within that one big theme provider. Awesome. Okay, color change is telling me that we're going into part 2 of our of, I guess, today's lesson, which means I'm breezing through it a little faster than I initially anticipated. So again, questions, concerns, very, very welcome. I'm going to go into what the routing looks like. So here we are keeping everything. These are photos from the app router. I'll adjust accordingly once we get into our pages router. But basically, every component has their own folder. Every page has their own folder. And then within each folder, you have naming conventions. So let's say your dashboard, this blue is your whole page, right? And then you have a layout for your dashboard. You have an error page. Like if something falls, if it doesn't load, if something goes wrong, error.js will render instead of like layout and settings and all of that. And then we have loading.js, which will render if there's nothing wrong, but it's not done rendering yet. So loading will be in between. And then here we see in purple another folder within dashboard called settings, which has its own layout, error, and loading. What this is saying is that settings is a component of dashboard page. And the page itself, like the content of the page, the components of the page will go in page.js. So someone is asking, and this structure is Next conventions. Yes, it's not React, it's Next. The React has very few naming conventions, but Next got the idea of naming conventions from them. But aside from like index and app, React is pretty like free. Like you can name your folders and your files whatever you want. Next is a little more strict about it, which for hackathons might be a little annoying, right? Because like you just want to get things over with, or you just want to like get on with the coding and not care about the conventions and the structure. But I think this is important to learn because once we get into our internships, our jobs, once we get into the industry, our projects get so much bigger and there's so much more to manage. So this tree of like a small hackathon project or a small website portfolio is going to look so much bigger once we're at work, that it is absolutely necessary to just keep it arranged, keep it organized, know where everything goes, know what each page does. And I wanted to share these naming conventions so that it's practice. So like, even though it's a hackathon project, even though it's a personal website, you still have the concepts of what best practices look like in the industry. Cool. So unless anyone has any questions about that, I think I can go into partial rendering, which is the last slide of my lectures bit, which is just saying, if you have those different components in different pages or in different like nodes, in different like leaves. So let's say, going back to this part, if you have password and profile separated, if you have something that's in password that gets re-rendered, like let's say if you type it in and then you pause for a bit for the form to check if it followed all of your rules, let's say one letter, one number, one symbol, right? That once your form is checking for those and it like basic React re-renders the whole page. Like if you need to check the password, the whole page where that password is gets re-rendered. On the other hand, partial rendering within Next only does the part that is changed. So let's say you have the settings and the analytics, right? Settings and analytics are siblings here, which means on the tree, they're on the same layer. And what this is saying is that if you're changing something in settings, only settings gets re-rendered. Analytics stays the same. It doesn't have to call in the processing power to redo analytics if only settings needed re-rendering. Same goes for API calls. If you have an API call in analytics and settings doesn't need to hear about that API call, only analytics will re-render, thereby keeping settings and layout and everything else static. It stays the same. This makes it a little faster for things to render, makes things like not as heavy on the processing power, which in our current like use case isn't too big a deal. But let's say you want to make a website that has AI, or like you made your own machine learning model that you want other people to check out. If that is a heavy machine learning model, and then you have your projects on the same page, if you use React, that machine learning model will drag down the performance of also your projects page. On the other hand, if you use Next and you do the proper naming conventions and the proper like folder structure, only that machine learning model will re-render as it's needed, and the projects, unless touched, will stay by itself on its own just fine. Awesome. So I'm going to pause for a little bit, see if anyone has any questions about that. Again, I just finished my whole lecture bit way faster than I thought I would. The only thing I have to cover left for today is like what I want folks to prepare for in the next two sessions. So it's a 3-session track. I wanted to do lecture, coding, styling. So it like balances out within the total 6 hours. And I just wanted to go into what my design was going to be for my website, how you can prepare for your design on your website, etc. But I saw some questions pop into the chat. So yay, someone said my explanation was nice. If settings is dependent on something in analytics, will settings re-render? So in that case, I would want to question if settings should be under, like if settings depend on analytics, it might even be that you want that as a node later, right? But if it's only a little bit, like let's say your analytics has a conclusion of like how many it's a dashboard, how many pings you get, and then your analytics will tell your settings based on how many pings you get, this is the setting that you apply, right? If it's a tiny thing like that, it would make sense that both get re-rendered. But if a lot of settings is relying on analytics, I would suggest you move settings into analytics, similar to how dashboard is an app right now. If settings is relying on analytics, put settings in analytics. If they're siblings, it usually means that they are like on the same page but not interacting with each other, or like not relying on each other. So I am too fast. Okay, thank you. I will keep that in mind for the future. How can we do this so that I slow down? Like, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. But there was a lag. I noticed the lag. So like, I don't know. I'll work on it. Thank you for the feedback. So can we use Next in a vanilla JavaScript project? The answer to that is, by being a Next project, it isn't vanilla anymore. Vanilla means that you have no libraries, you have no framework. It's just the language. It's just like script.js in an HTML project. Whereas if you're using Next, all of the folder structure, all of the like the way that the dependencies are connected makes it not vanilla anymore. Like vanilla JavaScript never has a package JSON, but Next will have a package JSON. So yeah, that answers that. Are we using ESLint? I'm pretty sure my VS Code automatically has that on. So yes, the answer is yes. I want as many best practices in this track as possible. Is a lot of Next optimizing parts of React? Yes. So Next is like, it's using the same like concepts as React of like, you make components, you render them with you render them, and then there's hot reloading and all of that stuff, because Next is on top of React. Yeah. So it is optimizing, and then it's adding like, Next does stuff for you that React you got to do manually. So, for example, routing, like if you use React, you may have heard of React Router, which is a separate library that just does routing, which you have to manually install each time you have multiple pages. But with Next, the fact that you're naming your folders a certain way is already your router. Like, so for example, in here, right, if we go a page back, in all of app, app contains my entire, again, application. One page is called blog and one page is called dashboard. Instead of having to write code that says blog is one page and dashboard is another page, and like making those connections, it becomes that just by naming it, it automatically even makes the URL like blog. It becomes like isa.tech/blog, isa.tech/dashboard. And then anything after that is a slug. So dashboard/layout, dashboard/settings. And it becomes either a separate component or a separate page, depending on your naming conventions. Do you have the slides for future presentations? It's going to be all in this slide deck. Like, I'm going to put it all in one place here, but the short answer is I haven't made the rest of them yet. I'm so sorry. Hey. I might not be able to make it to those with the time. Oh yeah, because it's like very, very early in the morning. It's very early for me too. Can we use Next aside from React? It becomes instead of, because it's on top. Like when you use Next, you're not like manually installing React or using React like stuff on it. But I think someone already covered that. Yes. Awesome. So first time using Node, that is absolutely cool. I think we have so much time. We can just wing it from here. I can show you. So this is where I've been on like trying stuff out on my own. This might be what it looks like for y'all. So if you want me to go over, so Joffrey. So if Joffrey, you want me to explain like all of the folder stuff, I can do that. Just let me know. On what condition the rendering is depending on. So any change that you make, like let's say, if you type something in that goes in one component to another component, that re-renders the whole thing. If you click a button and that makes an API call, that re-renders it. If you, what else? If you search something in a search bar, that once you're done there, it re-renders. If you have autocomplete, that re-renders. If you have the search suggestions in a search bar, that re-renders. Those kinds of things make you re-render. Okay, are we going over the coding portion tomorrow? Yes, not tomorrow. It's not tomorrow. Wait. The next section, so part 2, is going to be 9 a.m. Eastern, July 6th. So Thursday morning in America is when my next session is going to be. And that's when I'm going to be coding. And then after that, it's like the very next day, same exact time for the rest of my streams. So yeah, we don't have to code like right now. I just wanted to make sure that everyone's comfy first, before we get into like the very nitty gritty of the coding. So all the beginners who haven't said anything yet, can feel free to like ask any of the questions you have now, because I'm kind of chilling out. So I got people who say it looks like that. Oh, it's 6 a.m., which means Pacific time. Gotcha. I'm also not very keen on the fact that it's very early in the morning. But at least it's pushing me, like, I don't know, pushing me to be a morning person. Okay, so we had someone ask about the folder structure, and I can go ahead and do that. You can ignore these because you haven't made this yet. When you made your folder, do I have an example that hasn't been touched yet? No. So honestly, okay. npx create next app at latest. I'm taking a guess. Let's see. Am I right? Let's see. Yeah, create next app at latest. So I'm going to do this, and then this is what everyone is going to see, okay? And then, great, perfect example. It's going to tell you to install the package, and you can just say Y for yes, and then you can stick with the project that it's given. So I'm just going to keep it at my app, or you can type in what title you want to give it. It doesn't let you have, like, I think special characters and spaces, so that's why there's a dash on this one. Would you like to use TypeScript? This is entirely optional. I barely know TypeScript myself. I will warn you, I barely know TypeScript myself. But so if that's not something you're ready to learn yet, it's totally okay to say no. If you are ready to learn TypeScript, or you are already familiar with TypeScript, you can click yes. So I saw that there were a few people that we're talking about not knowing TypeScript, so I can just say no just for the example of it all. So someone asked, was like, would you like to use ESLint? I want to say yes because we do best practices here. Tailwind CSS. So there is this gives me a good segue into asking folks, like if you don't know Tailwind CSS, it is a framework, a tool, a thing that helps you use class names to style your website, which means instead of saying like naming it class name button and then in another space, in another file, in another part of the same file, defining the stuff like the font, the border, the padding, whatever else, instead of doing that manually, Tailwind CSS lets you, which you have to like have a separate tab to Google the specific keywords, but it'll let you say font semi-bold as a class name, so that npx isn't recognized, maybe because you don't have Node installed. Or if you installed it just now, you have to close your terminal and open it again to reload, to kind of like reset and let it find where npx is now. Okie dokie. If you said yes to everything, that is totally okay. So if I say yes, would you like a source? I kind of said no, just because it doesn't make a difference. App router, I will say no. Fudge you. I'm not going to do that. Customize, no. Default import alias. No, we don't need to. And now it's installing all of that. So if you already said yes to everything and you want to start over, you can just delete it and start over and like redo the same command, or redo the same command with a different name. The app router is the thing that I had so much trouble explaining earlier about like server and client components. And basically the app folder, the app router makes it so that it looks like this, where like it starts with app, but that's less than a year old. That new version is so new, not everyone has Googled what's wrong with it yet. So that's why I'm avoiding it. Just so that me and you, both like fairly new to Next, can learn as quickly as possible. Are these sessions recorded? Yes, they are. At the end of the stream, it's staying on Twitch for a month and it's on YouTube forever. Yes, exactly. Audrey got me. Thank you. And then, okay, so going back to my folder explanations. Okay, so now I've had all of my dependencies installed. So something that beginners sometimes worry about is these vulnerabilities. Or like sometimes when they say hi, or like the red color might frazzle you a little bit, like you have to fix it because it's in bold and in red. That's totally fine. Those vulnerabilities are not your fault. That's the vulnerability of the dependencies that you're using. That's Next's problem. That's Tailwind's problem. That's who else did I install? That's auto prefixer's problem. That's post CSS's problem. That's not your problem. You're totally okay. You do not need to audit anything. You're good. Okay. Having said that, I am going into my app and now I'm in here. Node modules is installed automatically. We got our pages folder, we got our API folder. So this is I ideally want y'all to see it like this. I kind of want to remember what. Dang, I lost it. I was gonna say like I want to write down what people say yes and no to. So remember how we said no to app router and we said yes to ESLint and everybody? And we don't want to ignore them, but also it's not within our power to change them unless we go into open source and we become a contributor actively in the community. It's a lot of work. So I'm just going to leave it as it's tomorrow's problem. It's someone else's problem. So yeah. So going into explaining our folders. So we have one for pages. We have one for styles. Oh, I remember someone asking earlier what extensions they should get. Whatever extension I got that gave me these folder icons, you should get that. I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful that I can see that my styles and my pages and my API are, yeah. Okay. Can you show the yes, no part? I'm going to do that. Npx create, gosh, I'm going to make another one. Create, or no, let's go out first. And then we say npx create next app, and then at latest, and then just that. And then it asks us to install, and then, oh gosh. Oh, because it's the same one. Oops. So let's say new app. So TypeScript. Do you guys want to use TypeScript? We'll learn together. Okay, I'll say yes. Would you like to use ESLint? Yes. Would you like to use Tailwind? I'm gonna. Okay. Wait. Let's do this. Let's do this right, friends. Use TypeScript. Yes. 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 No. 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 Don't do that. Okay, so I'm gonna screenshot this. I'll screenshot this and add it to my slides. Does that make people happy? So let's see. I'm opening my next website. Okay. Where can I do this? Let's do new slide. Okie dokie. So, friends, very hard to miss. We are good there. So we are learning TypeScript, and then times like this make me wish I was running Linux. I want to suggest WSL. I very much recommend WSL. It means that you'll have Ubuntu, which is a Linux-based terminal, but the rest of your computer is still Windows, which means you can play your Windows games and all of that fun stuff. But you have the functionality of being able to code and like say RMRF if you want to delete a folder, like ls-a, stuff like that, because that doesn't work on PowerShell, which is a bit annoying, I agree. That's awesome. Alrighty. People are liking VS icons. Nice, nice, nice. Let's see. Are there any other extensions that I want to recommend? Yes, Lint is good. Of course, GitHub Copilot if you have like the freebie. The rest of these seem like if you are, oh, friends, I suggest live share. If you haven't yet, I suggest live share. It makes your VS Code a Google Doc. You can code on each other's VS codes, friends. That's so cool. Um yeah, so that's cool. There, this is my theme if anyone's wondering about my very nice pink and purple theme. Prettier, someone suggested prettier. I suggest that. This basically color codes your code. Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. Pylons if you're into Python, VS Code icons, and then WSL. So here we have, how did you get it for free? I was a trial kid, and then I think it's just like a legacy thing where if you've been there, if you were there from the start, maybe you can keep it for longer. I don't know. I haven't paid for it. I don't know. Does WSL override already existing PowerShell commands or what? No, it doesn't. Like if you can still keep using PowerShell even if you have WSL. They'll be separate terminals. So what that looks like is here. I have, for example, PowerShell, and then where's my Ubuntu? Do I have it here? I recently updated my computer. Yeah, see, so I have Ubuntu separately here. I did not finish setting it up. Okay, so there's a setup to it, friends. My bad. Someone asked for the icons. It's right there. But anyway, sorry. Going back to, so Ubuntu will be its own browser. I probably just have to look up this hex and then it'll solve my problem. I just been a little lazy about that. But once you're in VS Code and you have Ubuntu set up, it won't override PowerShell because it'll just be another one in this dropdown where like you have Git Bash as a separate terminal, you have PowerShell as another terminal. So it won't mess with anything too badly. Live share rocks, especially for hackathons. I absolutely agree. There were a few times where I had beginner teammates who didn't know how to use GitHub, but we just wanted to get it done, so we used live share for our project. So that's pretty cool. PowerShell was what made me switch to Linux. I get that. I get that for sure. We'll get VS Code. Why aren't we using App Directory? It is less than a year old, and the Stack Overflow has not kept up yet. Is my short answer. And I wanted to make everyone get so used. I wanted everyone to be able to just Google their own issues if I can't answer your issue. So I wanted to like save that. Okay, what's the icon extension? Someone's already solved that. And the ESLint, I think just says ESLint. What it, I think Microsoft or GitHub did all of my extensions because the blue check is there. Okay. And then can you please share the Google Drive in the discussion window panel? I shall. If someone hasn't already brought it down, I shall. Okay, there. So that is the link. I'll paste it again just in case. And Joffrey, just run the same command over again. So do the same npx create and then just name it another thing so that it doesn't like conflict. It doesn't conflict. Okay, I just know basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Is there something specific that I should know in React to get through this tutorial? How components work. Yeah, so I will add here EG components. So the modularity, I think I think that's the word, how to keep everything modular would be a good thing to learn about React before going into this. What are the web development norms and standards adopted for this project? Good question. So I am caring about project structure. I am caring about naming conventions. I am caring about routing and about, let's see, modularity, I guess. But that's part of folder structure of like keeping every component and every page in their own folder and having specific names for them. I'm glad. And then what else? Oh, by the way, so if it takes a while for me to respond, it's not, I'm not ignoring you. It's that the lag is strong. I guess my internet's a little slow. But since I think, have I explained everything about the folders? So we have our styles for the styling, pretty self-explanatory. Our API, if you want to make your own API, is here. Pages has everything. Underscore app is like index.js in React. It's that one file that you don't mess with because it just runs everything else. Document seems to be index.js is what you mess with. So if you want to start like tinkering while waiting for Thursday, index.js is where you tinker. And then public is just where it's the client side that gets served. So like images and stuff go in public, and then your styles is your style sheets, unless you're using Tailwind or you're using CSS in JS or something else, your CSS files will go here. But there's some things that you need the CSS files for. Like this is importing Tailwind. And these are like linear gradients, I think are much harder to do otherwise. There's also, if you want to make it, this goes into where we're into session 3, but I wanted to do styling, like how to center stuff, how to make them align a certain way, how to make different columns, like grids and stuff. I wanted to go over that during session 3, and that's also easy for using like style sheets and stuff. So I think another thing I wanted to cover was what I wanted to make, like how I wanted to make my website. So will you be able to see it from here? Probably not. So I think I can take a picture of this and then put it on the slides because we got dynamic note taking. So let's go into, I'm at 9%. Did I already take a picture of this? Not an updated one. So I'm going to take a picture of this really quickly, and then I'm going to share it with everyone just so you know how I want to design my website, because I'm literally making this because I wanted to make my own website. Like I just wanted to take you all along for the ride. And I wanted to have sort of like a computer looking thing. So I had browsers and tabs and stuff. Where are we going? We are going to this one. And then we're going to say edit. How can I edit? Can I edit? Gosh. Let's make a new. Okay. Wrong one. Pause for a second, friends. And then let's get rid of this. And then Larawan. Larawan. Give me 1 second, friends. I shall give you my. Oh, so I just learned something cool. The high quality images on a Samsung are a different file type, so it doesn't transfer over on Google Drive. Today I learned. I'm at 5%. I want to be able to transfer. It doesn't support the image. Gosh darned. How do I give this to y'all? How do I share my designs? Because I personally, like, I think I'm design oriented, where I'm good at like drawing up designs and stuff, but I am so bad at Figma, y'all. The specificity of the pixels and like all of that, like the nitpicking, I am not good at all. So I like to draw freehand my designs like as much as possible, which might not work very well apparently for presentations. Let's pause for a second. In the meantime, I am listening to questions. Yes. Someone saying thank you to themselves? Huh? Okay. Fresh, but it's not working. It's saying unknown command. So if you close your terminal and then open it again, it might refresh and let you do it again. So try that. In the meantime, I'm not giving up on this. I want to show you all my design. If not, we shall maybe Figma it. Oh, I know. You wanna be janky? I'm gonna be janky. I'm gonna take a screenshot of the file that wasn't supported. That's funny. It worked. That's kind of funny. Okay, so here. Oh, didn't transfer over. Okay, let's save it, then go back, and then reload it. Which means you should see my last slide with my image. Okay, almost there, friends. We're almost there. There we go. Okay, so let's crop this and crop this. And this is my design. Okay, if you, right here, that's my design. And to explain what I wanted to do with this, let's see, let's open slideshow. Let's go back there. Okay, ducky. So here we have, I wanted 3 sections: an about, a projects, and an experiences. I wanted, this is a very stretch goal. I haven't figured out how to do yet, but I wanted just like 3 screens worth of work, like, and then it'll snap into place as you scroll. So like it'll click into place into the next browser and then scroll up and then click into place into the next browser. And I wanted each tab on this browser per se to be one job, one project. So here in my, I think this one is experiences. I wanted just the logo on the tabs, the logo of the company. And then the responsibilities or any projects I have will go in the browser body here. And then I put a placeholder, like if I wanted an image, it'll go on the right. And then something that I was interested in was having tags, like if I was an intern versus if it was a full-time job, whether it was teaching or not, whether it was software engineering or product management or hackathons. I wanted to have that as filters where, like, if I click on teaching, for example, it'll only show my teaching jobs. It'll hide the rest of them. And then similarly with the project side, similar browser idea, similar tags idea, but instead of the icon on the tabs, I wanted the title of the project. That mouse is tweaking. I see it. Oh gosh. I don't know how to. Okay, that worked. That worked. I don't know how that worked, but it worked. So the, how do I point to it otherwise? Okay, it's fine. Tweaking already. So keeping it there. I wanted the title of the tab to be the like what hackathon it was or what the project title was, and then have an icon only if I won at that hackathon, have like an emoji or an icon next to the title. I wanted a blurb, I wanted my tech stack, I wanted my filters, I wanted a special spot if it wasn't a solo project for what personal contribution I had. So, one thing I wanted to say for the design is this is what I wanted to look like on mobile. So this is very landscape heavy, like it fits perfectly on a desktop or on a laptop, but it won't look as pretty being landscape on a phone. So if I'm gonna make it like a stretch goal that if it's if it's accessed from a phone, it'll change what the tabs look like. So I think I'm gonna keep the content the same here, but tweaking mouse. But I wanted the tabs to be squares on top instead, like just floating instead of something that looks like a browser. So I'll take away from the idea a little bit, but it'll be much friendlier to anyone that's on a phone. And as someone who does network with other folks in like networking events, I want and they check me out from their phone. I would want them to have a good experience on my website from their phone and their computer. So I designed both my browsers and my little blurb to change if it's mobile. So those are the things that I want to happen in the next two sessions. So I'm probably going to code up what the content is beforehand since I have 3 days until our next session. I'm going to like put all my projects in, I'm going to put all my experiences in. However, I may want to like because I want to have like the code along with me experience with y'all where like I'm doing a thing and you're following along with me. Um, but I yeah, but it also makes me not as prepared for like curveballs. But that's okay. We'll figure it out as we go along, friends. We got this. Doubling back, what is the development of architecture? That is a good question. I remember you, Tintin, asked me this the exact, like a very similar question before in a different like project, and I still didn't know like what the meanings were. Um, but the I don't think it'll be like I project lifecycle process means I'm making iterations on it. This is a one-time thing. Like I can do this in a single sitting and then call it finished. So I don't think there's much like architecture, there's much like lifecycle process in this. Since it's just a small project, I that might be a question for like something bigger that's more long term. So instead of app and index. Oh, that's just for the JavaScript question. I am so sorry. Give me a second. Something is falling. Okay. We are A-okay. Going back. So thank you for thinking I'm organized. I love giving the impression how I learned to write websites. Awesome. Okay. I would love to see the final design. We will both see the final design by like Friday. Is Friday my session 3? It is. So Friday morning I'm going to style it. And just so you know, friends, this is okay. So this is my current gosh. This is my current website. It, like when you browse, when you move your cursor, the bubbles kind of like get a little bigger, and then this kind of like rotates down. We've got this, which is what I kind of wanted for like the next project that I have. I have a random fun fact generator. I don't know how to make it not do the same like fun fact over and over. It's literally just random. But I also have my email, my LinkedIn, all of my important links. I have featured news, like if I was on YouTube or if there was an article about me. And then my experiences is like I like how I did it reminds me of subway maps, this part. Like I was inspired by subway maps. But basically I put my experiences here and any related links under each experience. But do you see how it's like it gets crowded, bro? It gets very crowded. And I haven't updated my project since 2020. It's and like my website still says 2022. So it's time for a change, friends. It's time to move on. Okay. GPT-4 can turn that image into a full site. Okay, but at what cost? Because like not only the financial cost, but also the mental like laziness that I would be putting myself through if I don't work on it myself. Plus, like I won't be able to flex that hey, I made this myself. Because this is pretty, but it's HTML and CSS, which is not like the best thing to like show off to employers. Um, but I I don't know how to replicate this in any other way. Like this blobby thing that I did. Um, how did you make the effect? Let's see. Um, do I have it? Here in portfolio. So this is my portfolio page. We're going on tangents now because we have so much time. Script.js. I have this. So if you go on my website and you go like view page source, you can actually see all of this. You can see how I made it because it's HTML and CSS. And like you can even go on the different files and stuff. But this is how I did it. I got a little help from a friend. But it's basically initializing each blob in and like randomizing the sizes, but giving it a sine wave to follow. So this is like a very fat sine wave that kind of just like follows along from left to right. And I remember one of the things that makes my website lag a little bit is because there's so many of those blobs and I don't entirely understand if it unrenders on the right and re-renders on the left or if it like just keeps going forever. So yeah, this is what I currently have, which does the job, but I feel like doesn't showcase only my best features. And what I want moving forward is just a highlight because it feels like I've done a lot already. So I want only the most important of these since not everyone is. That's another thing I want to like mention is like as you're designing your websites, think about how much time. Oh, I did this. I put Google Analytics on my website and I put Google Analytics on my website and found out that it takes like 10 seconds for people to look through my website on average. Granted, some people just like open it and close it, which changes the average, but people don't spend too much time on these things. Partly because of our attention spans as a people, and partly because it is up to you as designers of your own websites to make it as eye-catching as possible. So yeah, I made a cool little animation that makes people interested, but once it goes here, it's such a wall of text that people get bored and like don't, for example, click through this interview or click through this demo. So my goal is improving that user experience so that the 10 seconds that people spend on my website will be valuable ones. Like in those 10 seconds, they learn so much cool stuff about me that they want to learn even more. They'll spend more than those 10 seconds on my website, you know? So yeah, that is my goal. And going back, there we go. So that's why I want like, I think I listed 1, 2, 3, 4 projects to go on my projects page. And then however many experiences, because I've kind of been at work I've been working since 2017. So I've had internships and stuff since 2017. Kind of racked up a little bit. But they're all internships. So it's a long list, but not a lot of years, you know? So just saying that, you while leading up to Thursday, it would also be cool if you start um, thinking about what else you want to put on your website. Let's say you're a photographer, maybe you want to put like a bunch of your photos on your website. Then actually that gives me an idea that if you're a photographer, let's say and you want to put your photos on your website, on your personal website, one way that Next.js is improving the performance of React is if you have a React website and you have very HD photos, which is what usually happens when you're a photographer, it's going to take a little bit to load. It's going to lag a little. But if you're on Next, because it's server side, it'll load a little faster, much faster even probably. I found questions. So someone already answered Joffrey, but if anything else, how do you identify projects and experiences? I'm looking for my first job, have done things, but it's in my head. It's all a thing I did. I get that. Like, I did a thing. Is it good enough to get me other things? Or is it like cool enough? I think it's a matter of how you sell yourself. Like, I personally do not believe I am employable or I am like very hireable. But even if you didn't know me, if you just looked through my website, I have a few cool names that might make you think that I am worth hiring, right? Like them and them and them. And I think it's about the confidence that you have, which is like tangential, I guess. Um, but it's being so. Audrey, if I remember correct, if you are the same person I remember correctly, you were in the opening ceremony asking about transitioning careers. If that is the case, um, one thing that I find super duper valuable. Yeah, cool. Okay. So, one thing that I found super duper valuable is transferable skills. So, even if before I went into tech, I was in biology, I don't think petri dishes have a lot in common with user interfaces. So like I thought I have no classes in common. I probably won't be able to do anything or like to be able to be hired as easily because my jobs are so unrelated. However, and this is like something that dawned on me a little bit that like the um even okay, so even if you only ever worked at a Starbucks or a Best Buy or a Home Depot, I don't know, those are still transferable skills because you know how to talk to people, you know customer service, you know how to manage your time, you know how to oh, Starbucks example, your ability to work under pressure is like unparalleled. If you can work at a coffee shop on rush hour, I think that's unparalleled, bro. Um, so being able to explain those transferable skills with whatever experience you do have, related or not, is super important. So I've got a few folks pitching in. Yes, soft skills are super important when transitioning. And yes, imposter syndrome is a plague. Um, I find that um, oh, like fun little story that I had. One coworker, she also works at MLH. She's another coach, Jacqueline. She's the one that started the Blahaj like phenomenon here at MLH. I had a bit of trouble with imposter syndrome, and she, being like a white woman from the UK or Canada or something like that, was telling me that I, perfectly capable, accomplished person, might be too afraid to apply for a job that some mediocre white man had enough confidence to apply even though he was unqualified and will get the job. Like, identity aside, it's a like what you identify as aside, if you have the audacity, if you have the confidence to believe that you deserve whatever that thing is, it's more likely to come to you. I'm like rambling into different territory now, but you get what I'm trying to say. That like, um, it's about how you present yourself, not just the contents of what you're presenting. Um, on the other hand, there are other people who just started and don't have enough stuff to put on a page. I think what would be cool there is talking about what you've yet to do, like what you're planning on doing. For example, if you want to commit to one hackathon a month, that means one hackathon project every month one hackathon event, even if you don't code a month, then you could put that on your website. You could then say, by the end of this challenge, I will have 12 hackathon projects, 12 different experiences, and I'm going to try web dev, I'm going to try IoT, I'm going to try hardware, I'm going to try healthcare, I'm going to try video games. And I think that being able to express that even if you don't have it yet, you are enough of a go getter to um, get the experience that you don't yet have would would make you still just as hireable, I would say. Or probably because sometimes there are some people who hire based on potential instead of experience. And like, if you show your potential, if you show that you have good work ethic, oh, that's another like thing that you can put on your resumes and portfolios. What kind of work ethic you have? Are you someone that doesn't give up, or are you someone that even if you fail, you will keep standing up? Are you the kind who has initiative and always helps the next person if you see them struggling? Like, those are kinds of things that you can also mention aside from I made a thing. Um, Hackathons also help build your coding portfolio. I absolutely agree. And yes, everybody has to start somewhere. I do agree. Um, let's see. I went on a tangent. Thank you for rolling with it. Does anyone have any other questions? Does anyone have any other input? I kind of went over everything I wanted to cover already, so we're just chilling now. If anyone wants to bring up their anime again, very very open to that now since we're done with our like lecture and our designs. Be suitable for an internship placement at MLH. Okay, so are you interested in the fellowship or like an internship? Thank you. Okay, wait. Or whichever one you're into. Both. Thank you. um, but just to start answering this question, um, internships, if you're looking for software engineering internship, right? They tend to ask for a like object oriented programming. They tend to ask for like so, they might even ask for you to know at least one low level language. So high level languages are Python, JavaScript, things that make consumer level products like apps and websites. Low level languages are things like C++ or Java that make infrastructure. And usually internships want either a balance or more so the infrastructure type of like experience. Just because things like the high level languages are a little more easy to learn by a non CS major. Like, we have a media studies at my college, and the media studies are usually the ones who make websites and stuff, whereas the computer science students make like um what do you call those, interpreters, compilers. We usually make those kinds of stuff as opposed to websites. Even on a front end position. So if you want a very specific front end position, like I know Atlassian has a front end position, Palantir has a front end position, where it's like very specifically just front end. Then yes, Joffrey's idea of like user experience, JavaScript, Bootstrap would be like you'd be fine with just that. Um, I think I would say though those are a little more competitive. Like because just like you, they probably think it's an easier internship to get into. More people are applying to the same thing, so it's more saturated. So even if the bar is set the same place, where like you need to know X, Y, and Z lessons, because so many people are competing over the same thing, they have to find other things that make you stand out. Does that make sense? Code Geass is in heavy rotation. I love that. Code Geass is, I did not realize. I mean, I did realize how old I was, but it doesn't quite hit me as much as realizing that Code Geass is almost what 15 years old. It's old, but it's a really cool one for me because it got me into mecha, like those giant mecha things. I don't think anyone else has pulled it off as well. I think than Code Geass or like I guess Evangelion, but that one's a little too old for me. For what it's worth, web accessibility and front end is in high demand right now. That is true. So see that then begs that furthers my point of like wanting to learn Next, wanting to learn best practices, wanting to learn TypeScript. For you to stand out in everyone wanting to do front end, they will want you more if you know new stuff. If you can keep up with what everyone with what the um, industry is doing, that makes you more hireable. Web accessibility is a really great point. I appreciate you for saying that, Marie, because I did a workshop on like web accessibility and it was a very short one because like people weren't too interested in it, but I don't know what that means. What does this mean? But I I think it's really important, but it's not something that anyone who isn't disabled cares about much. Like unless you have the experience of struggling with fonts or struggling with colors, you won't care much about fonts or colors unless to make it pretty. So yeah, that was a sad little note for me. If you like to go full stack or back end, it's better to know low level languages. Yes, very much so. If you're very back end, something like C++, Java, Go, those are the kind of things you may want to learn. When I did back end internships, it was or like back end heavy work, it was Go and C++ that they C sharp too. C sharp was what they asked for from me. Who is your favorite character in the Seven Deadly Sins? I watched the first like what 3 or 4 episodes. I didn't get too far. Um, but the giant girl and Meliodas are so far okay for me. Um, and then Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood are also very good. Brotherhood is my number one anime, like top. If anyone asks me what my favorite is, it's Brotherhood. I don't watch it very often. Like it's not a very repeatable anime. Like it's not too comforting. But from like an artistic and storytelling and animation point of view, top tier. Top tier. Currently learning the MERN stack. So that's Mongo, Express, React, and Node. That's pretty good. And MERN is most, I guess, common. So even if it's not the most cutting edge, you'll get like a big pool of companies that are hiring specifically for MERN. It's just that, let's say, for example, if you're into startups, they might want modern tech more, and if you're into like I don't know hospitals, they might care more about C++ and like older languages, just because of like how those industries work. Any documentation for MERN? If anyone else has any suggestions, I'd love to hear them because I just learn from documentation. Like if I want to learn React, I go to the React documentation straight. Um, I think it's Spring Boot, right? That's the I want to say Java. It's like Java Spring Boot. Yeah. So Spring Boot is helpful for like the Java ecosystem. I'm not entire. I haven't like tried it myself. I had one hackathon teammate who really really loved it and forced the rest of the team to use it. But aside from that, I haven't for Java products maybe. Yeah. Someone is suggesting roadmap.sh. And then doubling back, what are the current tech stacks that are popular? So MERN is one. There's also, I guess, there's Next is also pretty popular. Angular and Vue.js both are slowly not as popular anymore. So I personally wouldn't put too much time on Angular and Vue. Um, and then people are moving into like native apps like Flutter, React Native, that kind of stuff. Um, there's also, I saw, so when I was searching for jobs, one that I found like a lot was them asking for C++ and C sharp. Um, Something that I noticed some jobs look for but isn't entirely talked about often enough is testing frameworks. I don't even remember what they're called, but basically like the Jester, I think, or those testing frameworks. Learn those. I probably will learn them and then teach everyone after I learn it at another global hack week. But testing and like unit testing is something that schools don't usually teach or hackathons don't usually get to. So by the time you get an internship, that's the first time you're seeing testing. Okay, someone is confirming that it's just and PyTest for testing. Someone is, oh, and then data was mentioned as well that I can go into. How much JavaScript is enough for starting? Okay, let me be honest with y'all. I think I learned React before knowing that it was in JavaScript. Like I winged it so hard at different hackathons that I just Googled what I didn't know in terms of framework. In terms of like syntax, like arrow functions or like curly braces or whatever, semicolons. As long as you know the basic like parentheses versus curly braces versus square brackets versus angle brackets. If you know the basics of how to make a function and like all of that stuff, you're good. You're set. The rest is you can just Google what you don't know as you. I personally like learning by doing. I like making a project, getting stuck, Googling where I'm stuck, and then moving forward. So there's a flow to how I'm learning it aside from just like chapter one, chapter two. Because books kind of bore me. And like videos, if I don't like how the person is talking, I won't listen. I'm so sorry. I think I'm realizing it now. It's the same with professors. If I don't like how the professor talks, I don't. It goes in one ear out the other. So YouTube videos doesn't work well for me either. Um, and then I learned functions and DOM manipulation logic before React. Made the transition a lot better. Thank you. That's helpful. The DOM manipulation one I think started being helpful for me once I went into like, for example, APIs and like all of that territory. Before I was just like making static websites. For making static websites, Joffrey, you're already good. Like if you know basic syntax. Once you get into making more functionalities, making more like interactivity, that's when you need to learn more. Like it's incremental. But for now, you're good to start. How will we get to know proper sequence to which language we have to do first, like first MongoDB, then Express, like that? Oh, I think it like in my case, since I learn by doing, it depends on the project that I'm making. Like, oh, in this case, sometimes you need Express to connect to MongoDB, for example, right? So you might learn Mongo first, but in order to make it work with React and Node, you need to also learn Express. But if you learn Express first, then you're not connecting anything with it yet. So like it's really up to you. Um, it's the more you learn on your own, the more you know how to learn on your own. Like learning how to Google stuff, learning how to debug, learning how to look for good resources, learning how to find good explanations becomes like as you practice, as you get along. Learning how to learn is a fundamental part of being a coder. I do agree with that. Um, I found that in the times that I've like helped other coders, in the times that I've mentored other students, even if they're super duper smart, they don't but they don't have the work ethic to like learn on their own or like have that initiative, that kind of stuff. I found them to be surpassed by the not so knowledgeable but super good work ethic and learning style kind of student. Like kind of like a graph of like, gosh, a graph that starts high but doesn't increase very fast, or starts low but increases very quickly, right? Like if you know how to learn, you can get further faster than someone who's so good at learning things easily. Because I used to be the kid that learned things easily. And if you learn Next, you don't need Express. Thank you for that point. Absolutely. See, like these, some of these stacks, you need separate pieces, but Next and other newer frameworks, they do some of the work for you, including Express. Can I get a link to the presentation? Absolutely. And then, just so y'all know, my link tree has, I think it's like this. No. Ooh, okay. So my link tree has all of my slides, all of my videos, all of the thingies. Which means, yeah, so this is also available for y'all if you need it. I put stars on the ones that had good turnout or like people liked, and then like that. And then my LinkedIn's also here. Anything else? My GitHub is also here. If you like playlists, I also like snuck it in here. But yeah. So, um, will the code be on GitHub? Um, Good point. I didn't think of that, but I will now. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a GitHub that everyone can either look at or work with by Thursday. So to answer this question, should I start with React or Next? You won't understand React very well if you don't know. You won't understand Next very well unless you know React. What's next after this? Start designing your own websites. Start thinking about how you want to display the things you want to display. And then, if possible, think about how you want to implement it. Like, remember when I said my tabs will change what's in the container? Think about which buttons get pressed, which components you need to make. Just start with like planning, and then we'll implement by Thursday. How does that sound? And then last minute for anyone else that has any questions, concerns, anime questions, or like things you want me to recommend. I've seen like hundreds of anime. I have recommendations. But otherwise, thank you so much for being a great audience. I again will be back. I have Wikipedia races on Wednesday, but that's just a mini event, and then I have the part 2 of this on Thursday morning. Any good resources on React? Someone gave an example, like I think it was like a roadmap or something. There was this. I think this is for React. I'm guessing. There is also. I'm scrolling up. If anyone wants to, yes, you're welcome. Scrimba. There we go. So that's another example of good React resources. Anyone else? Any other questions before we wrap up and say goodbye? Ooh, Scrimba is paid. We don't like paywalls in here. We don't like paywalls here. W3 schools help me get through it. There's also Codecademy is also okay. It might be like some of it is paid and some of it isn't. What do you recommend? How do you recommend learning Node and Native? I haven't heard too much about Native, but Node is basic enough that I would suggest learning it. Yeah. What you view course or documentations? I don't have any courses. I don't usually do courses, but for documentations, I just use the official ones. Like I think it's like react.org, and then that's the official Oh, that is definitely not it, bro. React.js. React.dev, sorry. So I just kind of learned from this. This is the way that I learn best personally because I can copy and paste the snippets and I can work on like the demos and stuff. So that's how I do it. But yeah. Free Code Camp is very free. Codecademy is paid. I want to see React Codecademy if it's behind the paywall because some of them aren't. So see, certificate of completion with are paid, but expand all sections. The lessons are free. The projects and the quizzes aren't. So if you just want to learn, they're pretty. The way they make their lessons digestible, like very bite-sized chunks, are pretty good. Awesome. Alrighty. So once again, I want to thank you all for coming. Wait, there. Cool. So thank you all for coming. I will see y'all next Thursday, hopefully. Otherwise, my recordings are going to be in that link tree or here on Twitch and YouTube. Bye, friends.